Green Lantern Annual Number 1, written by Jeff Johns, art by Ethan Van Sciver and Pete Woods. Last issue was issue 12, and it was revealed to Black Hand that Hal Jordan will be the greatest Black Lantern. That's all we know. This issue, it is two plots that converge into one, so I'm just going to start with the Hal plot, and we will get to the other one later. So Hal Jordan wakes up, he's buried underground, and Black Hand is the one who buried him there. So he thinks of Carol, and he punches his way out. By the way, his ring is dead, and he manages to get his way out of the ground. And then he gets up, he looks around, he's like, all right, I gotta go find Carol. But then he looks over and sees there's another grave freshly dug for Sinestro, and he's like, all right, I should probably save him. So he starts digging out Sinestro, and then Black Hand shows up and be like, hey, why don't you just leave him? He's a dick. And then Hal's like, I'm going to do it. If you want to kill me already, I'm out of juice. Just kill me already. And he's like, oh, I don't want you dead. But question, what would you do if I offered to let you see your dad again? And we see they're in a cemetery, and his father's grave is right there. And he's like, don't do that. And he's like, oh, but don't you miss your dad? Like, I can easily bring him back. He's like, that won't be my dad. It's like, actually, yeah, it kind of will be your dad, considering that that's your dad down there. So I'm going to start doing that. And he says rise to Hal Jordan's dad. However, apparently, even in death, Martin Jordan has a little bit of willpower, and he's fighting against it. So at this point, Hal's like, nope, stop it. And he tackles Black Hand and bashes his eye into the corner of a tombstone. And Black Hand, of course, not being able to die, is like, all right, yeah, I'm going to kill you now. And so he goes to attack Hal. But Sinestro, having already broken himself out of his shallow dug grave, shoves a shovel into the back of Black Hand's head. And at this point, they start running, and they're like, okay, we need a plan. Hal, where's your battery? And sorry, real quick, I skipped over this line. I really do enjoy this. Sinestro says, after I heard you digging, you were actually trying to save me, weren't you? And Hal goes, and then he goes, but you didn't, and I ended up saving you. Typical. So, yeah, he's like, where's your battery? He's like, it's all the way back at Carol Air. And he's like, is that too far? And he's like, yeah, that's too far for a zombie apocalypse chasing after us. And then Hal's like, wait a minute, you pulled your yellow lantern out of, subspace. Can you pull out your green lantern? And he's like, I could have had a charge, but I don't have a charge. And he's like, well, I have my ring. That's a part of your ring. What if we just both will it really hard? And Sinestro's like, that's not how that works. And he's like, do it anyway. So they touch rings, and, they get enough of a charge that he can pull his lantern out. So then they start doing their oath and start blasting everything in the cemetery. But as they're attacking all these zombies that Black Hand is pulling up, he's just pulling up more because it's a cemetery and there's a lot of them. So at this point, I'm going to stop and go to the other plot, which is the Guardians, who we opened up the issue with, of them recounting. They're like, okay, so our first plan was the Manhunters because we thought that emotion was the problem, but then we realized that, they didn't have emotion to stop them from killing everybody. So then we thought that fear was the problem, and we made the Green Lantern Corps. But it turns out that, everybody is a little bit chaotic in all the corps. So in actuality, the real issue is willpower. And to be more specific, free will. We got to take free will away from everybody. That's our master plan. So they say that what they need to do in order to execute this plan is to go to the Chamber of Shadows, which is a giant vault that they keep the first lantern in. And the first lantern, they're going to use his power to create the third army. And as they're flying through this weird, subspace thing, they see Black Hand has returned in their fight. And it's like, oh, hey, we could use him. Let's keep an eye on him. So then they make it to this vault, they break the chains on it, and as they open it up, inside are a bunch of other Guardians, other people from their race. And they're like, hey, did you do it? Did you save the universe? Is everything okay out there? And he's like, no, we're still working on that. We need the first lantern. And they're like, but we're in here to guard the first lantern because he is so unbelievably powerful and could kill us all. And they're like, yeah, but we need it to save the universe. And he's like, I don't think that's a good idea. And then the Guardians are like, step aside or we're going to kill you. And he's like, okay, well, I guess we fight. So big fight between the Guardians and the other people of the Guardians race. And at a certain point, they, Elder, the one in charge, he's like, remember, brothers and sisters, remember our oath. He has to stay here. And then one of the Guardians sneaks up and literally just slices his throat open, killing him. And the energy within him was so powerful, it cracked open the vault within the vault that was holding the first lantern. So they go inside and they see him there. And he's like, hey, someone out there? Please let me out. And he's like, no, you're too powerful, but we are going to take you we're going to take your little mini vault outside of this bigger vault. We're going to take that with us. So then the other Guardians around are like, oh my God, they killed him. They've gone crazy. Like, what's going on? And at that point, the original Guardians are like, I say original, the ones that we're familiar with are like, okay, we're going to lock you all back in here again so you don't interfere with us. Bye. And then they lock the bigger vault and make their way through subspace carrying along the first lantern, where again, they're able to look outside and they see Hal and Sinestro launching an attack on Black Hand. And they're like, oh, that might actually be a problem because we need Black Hand. All right, we got to deal with this part now. So a Guardian just comes out of subspace and stops their attack on Black Hand. Then they all show up and start supercharging Black Hand. And he unleashes a giant energy blast. And they're like, yeah, Black Hand, go ahead and just kill them. Like, we just need them dead. And Black Hand's like, all right, I mean, I'm not going to turn that down. So he blasts them and they're being dragged away into like this big death portal thing, and the rings start thinking that they're dead. And Hal's like, are we dying, Sinestro? And it's like, seems that way, Hal. And they're like clinging to the ground. And it's like, okay, well, our rings are going to fuse back together into one ring when we die, and when that happens, it's going to search for someone new. It has to be someone like me, says Sinestro. And then Hal's like, no, you're a dick. It has to be someone like me. So they're both like arguing. They're like, focus, we got to think of the type of replacement that we want for our ring, which I guess is a thing they can do. But lo and behold, they get dragged back into the ring. Hal's last word is Carol, and they both die, and the ring fuses back together. It says error over and over again, but then it says scanning for closest sentient replacement, and then it just goes off. And the Guardians are like, cool, Black Hand, thanks for the save. You work for us now. And he's like, no, I don't. I work for Death. And he's like, okay, well, then we're just going to put you in that vault like we did our other Guardians. And so they just teleport him in there. Say, we'll get you back out when we need you. So at this point, they reveal their plan. It's like, okay, Hal and Sinestro are dead. We're going to kill Guy Gardner and the Green Lantern Corps. And then we'll take care of Kyle and the other Lantern Corps. And then the Third Army will rise. And then we get the epilogue, which is the one that's drawn by Pete Woods. And we see that in this cemetery, they are siphoning off power from the first lantern. And he's like, this is my power, don't take it. And he's like, no, we gave you the power in the first place, so we're going to take it. And he's like, no. So they start siphoning off his power, and it starts like overcharging them to the point where they're all like blistering and disgusting looking. And they all start collapsing to the ground. And they're like, okay, we got enough power, do it now. And they all put their hands in the middle of a circle, and some blue goop starts coming off of them, like part of their own biomass. And it starts crackling, and electricity starts forming into a humanoid shape that looks like pretty much your standard gray alien, like no mouth, big white eyes, a bit bigger and bulkier, but that sort of feel for it. And at that point, it's like, all right, cool. This came from us, and it's one with our minds. We're able to control it. And then, wouldn't you know it, the lowly cemetery guard finally shows up, and he's like, hey, everything good over here? Oh, what's that? And then this thing goes off, it attacks him, and it just assimilates him. It turns him into another member of the Third Army. The only remaining thing of his intact is his eyes. His heart was literally expelled from his chest. His mind belongs to the Guardians. His eyes are the only thing that still look like him. So it's like, okay, here's the plan. Original guy that we made. You go off into the universe and you create our Third Army. New guy, cemetery guy. You stay here on Earth and you do the same thing. Assimilate as many people as you can. And by the time anybody realizes what's up, it'll be too late. Because we're basically doing Zombie Apocalypse Part 2. All good, great, cool, bye. And then we end with a shot of the first lantern still inside of his cage and very angry. And that's it. And he's just a silhouette, by the way. He's no identifying characteristics. I like it. I mean, I'm not going to say I don't like it. It's definitely a very well-written thing. Sets up the entire Green Lantern line moving forward for at least the next 8 to 9 issues. Well-written, well-drawn. I really don't have many complaints about it. If I really had to pick one, it's that between the last issue to now, seems like, I mean, they were passed out, so I guess it makes sense that they were buried underground. Like, Black Hand just did that. But it's weird to me that he buried these people underground, and then when Hal got out, Black Hand was like, oh, I didn't want to kill you. So it's like, okay, well, then you maybe don't bury him under, like, he could have still died under there. That wasn't a given that he was going to get out. Either way, that's a nitpick. I do genuinely enjoy this. Overall, I'm going to say 9. I think that it's well enough done. I'm not personally that invested in the Jeff Johns run, having not read anything prior to the New 52, but I can definitely see the importance of this issue in that Hal and Sinestro were dead in the Third Army. Like, this is the end game of Jeff Johns' run, and I'm interested. I can recognize high quality work when it's there. So I'll give this one a 9. Even if personally I would put it at like 8.5, but from one to the other, not that big of a deal.